The Xbox 360 is Microsoft's best console so far, with so many great games, especially ones that appeal to Western audiences. In this video, we'll be taking a look at the top 10 Xbox 360 games of all time. We will only be mentioning games that were released as exclusives, so if a game was ported to another platform after the initial Xbox 360 release, it will still be on this list. Also, we will only be mentioning one game per series. With that being said, let's get right into this with number 10. Number 10, Shadow Complex. Xbox Live Arcade games became a gigantic fiction to the Xbox 360's library, but for a long time they were seen as smaller games that were priced lower for a reason. Shadow Complex was one of the games that changed the perception of arcade games with its excellent Metroidvania gameplay, great visuals, and coherent writing. And best of all, the game was only $15, and compared to a lot of fully priced games on the market, Shadow Complex was on another level. Now the game has been remastered on current generation platforms and PC, but in 2009, this was one of the system sellers for the 360.
Let her go!
Number 9, Forza Horizon. Forza developed into one of the major Xbox 360 exclusives, so much so that it branded off into two different series. First, we have Forza Horizon, an open-world racer that caters to more of a casual audience. The visuals were excellent, which is par for the course with the Forza titles, with a dynamic day and night cycle and a high level of detail with everything in the world. And while the open world wasn't filled with life and content, to have a Forza game in an open world setting was amazing. At this point, Forza Horizon 2 on Xbox One is probably the better pickup, but that doesn't erase the quality of the original. Number 8, Dead Rising. Dead Rising has become a pretty big franchise, now appearing on multiple platforms, but the original Dead Rising game was actually exclusive to the Xbox 360. In the game, you play as Frank West, who is trapped in a shopping mall that is filled with zombies. Okay, so the premise of the game sounds ridiculous at first, but the game is an absolute blast. Using all the different weapons, slaying zombie after zombie was some of the most fun you'll ever have in a game. Sure, Dead Rising was far from perfect, performance issues galore, the save system was pretty bad, but as far as pure fun factor goes, Dead Rising is top tier. The game hasn't aged all too well, but at the time it was great. Number 7, CRACKDOWN. CRACKDOWN was a game that sold extremely well, but maybe not for the reason you'd think. The game was actually bundled with codes for the Halo 3 beta, causing a lot of people to buy the game just for the beta. But hey, you pay $60 for a game, you might as well play it, and that's when people realized that CRACKDOWN in its own right was a fantastic game. The open world allowed for absolute mayhem, and CRACKDOWN was another game that really captured the fun factor. Sure, the story isn't anything good, but the gameplay is absolutely on point. The visuals at the time were also excellent, with a great cel-shaded look. CRACKDOWN to this day is a game I'd recommend you to go back and play. It's an absolute blast. Number 6, Alan Wake. Alan Wake is a psychological third-person shooter with some of the best writing you'll ever see in a video game. The story was the highlight of the game, with excellent pacing and great plot twists. The gameplay was also a bit different than your typical third-person shooter, with there being a flashlight you have to use before you can inflict damage. Graphically, Alan Wake was on another level, with insane detail and some great lighting effects. The real issue with the game was that it could be completed in 6 to 7 hours, there wasn't much replayability, and for a $60 game, that just wasn't gonna cut it for some people. Still, that 6 to 7 hours was an absolute thrill ride, and I highly recommend playing Alan Wake if you haven't already. Number 5, Forza Motorsport 4. Forza Horizon was great, but for many, nothing beats the traditional Forza Motorsport games. And with Forza Motorsport 4, Turn 10 created the definitive Forza experience on the Xbox 360. It was the era's best racing experience available on consoles. Forza 4 was extremely accessible while also offering all of the mechanics longtime fans look for. Graphically, it was great, from the detail on the cars to the terrain, it was extremely well done. And Forza 4 really captures the essence of racing, from the detail to the sound. The game even had Kinect support, which wasn't very good, but it was there. At this point, you'd probably be better off with Forza 6 on Xbox One, but as far as 360 racers go, it doesn't get better than Forza 4. Number 4, Lost Odyssey. The Xbox 360 was an absolute juggernaut for Western games, but it always lacked to find a footing in Japan. However, it did have a few Japanese games that were quality, the best being Lost Odyssey, developed by Mistwalker. The game has one of the best and most emotional stories in a JRPG, with a great cast of characters. The memory sequences especially were some of the best parts about the game, and that's where the writing shined the best. The gameplay was a bit dated, being a traditional turn-based JRPG, but it still worked well enough. Japanese titles were few and far between on the 360, but Lost Odyssey is a game that I recommend everyone to play. It's fantastic. Number 3, Gears of War 2. Gears of War became one of the premier franchises for the Xbox 360, filled with gore, guts, and testosterone. It's hard to pick which of the Gears of War game was the best, but Gears of War 2 stands just a little bit higher than the other games. From the excellent campaign to the addicting multiplayer to the horde mode, every element of Gears of War 2 was great in its own way. Mechanically, Gears of War has always delivered, and Gears 2 is no different. The gameplay felt responsive and satisfying. Gears of War 2 is an excellent third-person shooter, but you should play the entire series. The story was well told throughout, and they were all very good games. Number 2, Fable 2. Lionhead created arguably the best RPG on the Xbox 360 with Fable 2. Fable allows the player to really mold his character how you want to. There are so many options in Fable 2 that will morph your character based on what you do, and that adds a level of investment that not many other games can match. The combat was very good. Visually, the game had a fantastic art style, and the story and writing is up there with the best of them. It's unfortunate that Fable 3 didn't really capture the quality that was in Fable 2, and at this point, Fable has been largely forgotten. If you've never played Fable, I implore you, go back and play Fable 2. It's an excellent game, and fans of action RPGs will love it.
Beloved, be a legend. Who will you?
Number 1, Halo 3. When you talk about Xbox, no matter what generation, one game pops up, and that's Halo. Halo 3 was one of the biggest video game launches ever. The hype surrounding the game was absolutely insane. And when you have hype like that, it's so difficult for a game to live up to expectations, but that's what Halo 3 did. The multiplayer is where Halo 3 really shined. With so much content, different game modes, and reason to keep playing, it was one of the most addictive multiplayer experiences ever. Not to mention that the Forge mode added a gigantic layer to Halo 3. The sheer amount of content and replayability in the game was ridiculous. The single player was a bit of a mixed bag, the story was a bit inconsistent, and the campaign was relatively short. Even then, it was a quality single player campaign, just the one part of the game that was a bit of a disappointment. If you weren't a part of Halo 3's launch and the follow-up, it's hard to appreciate the sheer magnitude of the game. It's up there with some of the best first-person shooters of all time. So that wraps up our countdown of the top 10 Xbox 360 games of all time. What do you think? Do you agree with our list? Disagree? Was there a game we didn't mention that you think should be on the list? Comment your thoughts down below. Thank you for watching, and goodbye.